Welcome back to Switch to Linux, and today we are going to talk about the latest Linux Mint updates from the January newsletter, which dropped a few days ago, and I just got a chance to read it closely today, and I want to bring you up to speed about the project and what's going on with it. So, of course, he starts out just with a thanks at an unprecedented amount of donations, which is totally cool. And basically, they start by saying that the Linux Mint release for 22.3 was a very smooth rollout. They stayed in beta longer than they anticipated because they were gathering a lot of feedback, especially since that new cinnamon menu and the new keyboard layout and input method configuration did have a couple of changes in there that they really wanted to make sure they got it right. And they did, and they had very few problems after the rollout, which was very good. He did actually address that there were some issues with some of the keyboard layouts, like it wasn't as smooth as they would have liked it to be. And so he's been working with a couple of people that use dual languages and multiple different setups to test this more thoroughly. And it's something they are working on down the road. Of course, this deals with there is a new feature where you can much easily switch between different language input methods for your keyboards and mice, and whether it's your keyboard is just adopting a software-based layout or a physical keyboard layout, you can work with different settings. He's mentioning here, French and US, and he's talked to another person from French and Japan, trying to get everything set up right. So they're working on that. The next thing is, and I've noticed this myself, the forums are not working as well. Guess what? It's AI, bots, and scripts. The bane of the internet, again, is now striking the Linux Mint forums here as well. And so what they did is they increased the CPU capacity 10 times and added twice the bandwidth. So hopefully that will solve the 403 errors. They did also implement some things that would require you to make sure that your browser is much more up to date than in the past. So that's kind of what they're doing to solve the forum issues. The next thing they're really looking towards here is the user account and details. So he mentions here Linux desktop environments generally come up with their own tools for administration, but this is really, in his argument, should be something involved in the distribution itself. So in this one, I'm not sure what I think about this one, because if we're packaging it, let's say Arch, for example, relies almost entirely on having nothing in the software outside of it. You install your desktop environment. Some desktop environments, you will get some user management tool, and sometimes you don't. And so I don't know exactly how I feel about this one, but what his argument is, it's really up to the distribution manager to manage your users. Of course, in Arch, RTFM, man, go into your terminal and you do your user management from there. And that makes sense if you are into the terminal, but a lot of people like the GUI management tools. And so he is mentioning here that they're working towards improving the user management here. So they say they have a Mint sysadmin tool that will be in the next distribution. It will handle user administration and account details in additions where the desktop tools can be hidden. So basically, if the distribution has it, you have that, So there's a number of different ways you could manage your users. In this case, they're adding a new one, which actually allows you to add user accounts for them to finish setting up later. So kind of like an OEM build in a way, obviously it's a little bit different, but, you basically, if somebody else has a user account, you're going to give your kid a user account. You create the user account for them. When their first time logging into the system, they finish setting up the account and configuring all of the settings for them. So that's actually one of the things that they are working towards in here. So what they're doing here is focusing on the most common task. Once the user is set up, that user can set up the password. So you can see here, you can toggle on or off the administrator. You can look at the username, the password, last login, and the significant thing he's doing here is inside the GUI tool, they are going to have the option to do an encrypted home directory. So if you're unfamiliar with how the encrypted home directory works, your full disk encryption is always the best. It's an at-risk encryption. But the encrypted user home directory adds an extra layer of encryption that would keep your user account encrypted even if the rest of the disk is decrypted. So this basically means you have an extra layer of encryption that even if if that computer is turned on and the disk is generally unlocked, that home partition is still encrypted with a separate key. And that's really what they're focusing on here, is improving that home encryption option in addition to the older ways. Of course, full disk encryption can only be set up when you install the system, but the home encrypted directory, this can be set up after the fact, and it doesn't encrypt the whole system, obviously, just things within that home user folder. So that is actually a really cool improvement, and I have not seen a distribution that has a GUI option for an encrypted home directory before. That might be out there. I'm just unfamiliar with it if it is. So that's actually really cool. I have a reference here to webcams. I'm thinking this might be when you're setting your image, like you can choose from a number of different images in here, or maybe you can take a picture of one. I think that's what they're referencing right here. So there's the option to take a photo of yourself there as well. So that is a new option that you have, because I remember looking at this and I selected the coffee cup for my computer that is running 22.3 just because, there's nothing else in there that I really thought, wow, I really like. But, coffee, of course, amazing, But here you can actually browse for more photos or take a photo of yourself with your webcam. And these are high DPI support as well. So that's good. Now, they really said the last thing that is preventing Wayland from leaving the experimental phase into a production ready is the screensaver function. So the current Mint screensaver only works under X11. And that is one of the things they want to fix. And so effectively what they're going to be doing here is having full Wayland support to this. It will allow a lot smoother transition during the lock and unlock phases and have a much better integration. They said once this is in there, then they're going to have a basically move Wayland out of the experimental into the production. Probably they're going to go experimental, more of a testing, and then that. So I'd probably expect a couple versions before we see Wayland truly hit full production ready. But they've also did say that they're not necessarily going to follow the route everybody else of doing Wayland by default and X still in there, or maybe even effectively doing Wayland and then removing X altogether, like Plasma and GNOME are doing right now. And so this is a nice little in the middle approach that allows us really to get Wayland working, having it functional, but you still will have, for the long foreseeable future, the option of X or the option of Wayland. Now, I did actually have somebody send me, it was either an email or a comment on a video, I forget which, about, putting Ex Libre in here. And to my knowledge, it's not fully supported, or at least it's not in the repository, so you'd have to install it manually. I have not explored this, and it might be something I might look into exploring a little bit down the road. Just saying that is something some people have been talking about, especially since the developers of X are they're kind of in bed with the Wayland, so, overlooking some things, whereas the Ex Libre is trying to be its own independent project. So I don't know where that's going to fit down the road. I don't know if we're going to get Ex Libre support directly into Linux Mint or not. I really don't know. It would be a really neat thing if X11 truly does lose development due to craziness. Ex Libre as an option for people who still want that X experience instead of the Wayland experience. That would be a neat thing, but there's no comment on that. That's just my commentary. Now, the last thing they mentioned here is they are looking at the possibility of doing a longer development cycle. So, of course, right now they have the development cycle for Linux Mint usually lasts, I think it's 5 years. So when you get the version installed, it will have about 5 years or so of support. Maybe it's 3 or 5 years. And then after, they are really good, though. You can roll to the next LTS, which is nice and convenient. But in the middle of that, they have 3 different point releases. So 22.0 came out, then 22.1, 22.3, then 22.0, 22.1, 22.2, then 22.3 comes out. So what they're talking about here is having a longer development cycle, maybe something closer to Debian. And it makes me wonder, is there a conspiracy theory? Where's my tinfoil hat? Is this maybe a move towards that Debian branch instead of the Ubuntu branch? Nah, that's just me making stuff up. But they are looking at doing a longer development cycle. So they did mention here that that's not just a distribution. They also are a developer. So with the XApp and Cinnamon, and they spend a lot of time on the release management. So releasing often means they get a lot of feedback and bug reports as they introduce changes. So again, the advantage of having multiple point releases in the midst of the LTS cycle is that you can incrementally fix things. But they also say it takes a lot of time, caps the ambition when it comes to development. And with a release every 6 months plus LMDE, we spend more time testing, fixing, and releasing than developing. So they're basically seeking commentary on this. They're thinking about changing that and adopting a longer development cycle. As it happens, our next release would be based on a new LTS, and we just ran out of code names. So we just crossed that last Rubicon of code names there. So we'll see. So obviously this is something they're thinking about. Code names isn't the issue for them, but the development strategy is. And that's one of those things that they're looking at and considering going forward is what would a longer development cycle look like? Would that be more beneficial? Let us know your comments down there, and who knows, you can always jump onto the Linux Mint support forums over on Matrix or onto their forums and leave them your own thoughts and feedback over there as well. With that, thanks for watching, and this has been a Linux Mint update from Switch Linux.